Hi, good morning, everyone. Today I'll be presenting two legal case studies. The first is the Jackson v. Omi World, which looks at exclusion clauses and consumer protection under the Australian consumer law. So, this case is important because it shows how businesses must be transparent when they ask customers to sign agreements. So the second case is about the Alicia, a company director who breaches her duties under the Corporation Act by misusing company funds. So this case highlights the responsibilities of the directors and the serious consequences of failing to act in a good faith. So, across both the cases, I'll walk through the facts, the legal principles, how the law applies, and what reasons we can take away for business and legal practices. So, let's move to the next slide. Here is the acknowledgement of the country. So, we acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of this land and we pay our respects to elders, past and present. So, let's move to the next slide. Here, here's the outline of my presentation. I'll examine Jackson v. Omi World, focusing on exclusion clauses and the ACL. Next, I'll move to Alicia's case, which raises issues about directors, duties, and the misuse of the company assets. Finally, I'll compare both the cases and provide some overall recommendations and conclusion. So let's begin with the first case. In Jackson's case, he went go-karting at a track owned by Omi World. Before racing, he was asked to sign a document that looks like a simple registration or marketing form, but hidden inside it was an exclusion clause, basically a clause that's saying Omi World could not be responsible if he got injured. So now the law says that for an exclusion clause to be enforceable, it must be clearly committed either by the consumer signing it knowingly or by business giving responsible notice. So here that didn't, I can say, happen. Jackson was rushed and the clause was viewed in a fine paper and the form was misleading. So, under the Australian consumer law, that amounts to unfair and deceptive conduct. So, Omniworld might argue that Jackson accepted the risk of go karting, but assumption of risk only works if the risk is obvious and freely accepted. So, in this case, the hidden clause and lack of transparency make their defense weak, so the Jackson has strong grounds to claim negligence and consumer law breaches, and Omi could be held liable for his injuries. So, moving to the next slide. Now let's turn to Alicia's case. So Alicia was a director of Cowbell Limited. She transferred $6 million out of the company into her personal trust accounts. So here how she used it. So 4 million went into buying share in another company, so Soya Limited, to artificially support its share price, and this 2 million was loaned to her own private businesses. So this behavior is a clear breach of Corporations Act. Directors has a legal duties including the duty to act with the care of diligence, the duty to act in good faith, the duty not to misuse their poisons positions, and the duty to prevent insolvent trading. So, by transferring company money for her personal benefit, Alicia put her own interest ahead of the company's. So, both Cowbell Limited and Soya Limited later collapsed and leaving creditors unpaid. So, the consequences of Alicia are serious. So, she faced civil penalties such as fines and being disqualified from the managing companies. But because her actions were dishonest, she also faces potential criminal charges, which could mean imprisonment. So this case demonstrates why directors must always act in the best interest of the companies and its stakeholders, but not themselves. So let's move to the next slide. Here are few conclusion and recommendations. So conclude these two cases, although very difficult, very different, share a common lesson. The law is designed to protect fairness and accountability. So in Jackson v. Army World, the focus is on the consumers. Businesses must ensure that contractors, waivers, and exclusion clauses are transparent, easy to understand, and properly disclosed. So, trying to hide behind unfair terms can lead to liability. So, if I talk about the Alicia's case, the focus is on the corporate governance. Directors must act responsibly, avoid conflicts of interest, and always comply with their duties under the Corporations Act. So, breaches can have devastating effects, not just for the company, but also for shareholders, employers, and creditors. So, the big takeaway is this: fairness, transparency, and accountability are essential in both consumer transactions and corporate management. So, one case protects individuals from unfair businesses practices while the other protects companies and their stakeholders from misconduct at the top level. So, thank you so much. This is the end of my presentation. Hope so you will like this presentation. And once again, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk over these two legal cases. Thank you, everyone.